All right, welcome to the Drill Down Insider. We've got a really great story right now talking about what happened with Synopsis and their huge acquisition of Ansys that went on for quite a long time. Joining us right now is Chief Financial Officer Shelagh Glaser. Shelagh, I was telling you when we were getting ready that analysts on conference calls were always saying, great quarter or congratulations. But from my heart, legitimately congratulations, because this thing took a while.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's talk about what it is, and let's talk a little bit about what the hurdles are, and then we'll talk about maybe what's possible. But why? I mean, this is a question that came up when the deal was first announced, but why Synopsis and Ansys?
So what you really think about bringing together is two different parts of the design process. So at Synopsis, we have the software that enables engineers to build complex chips or digital design. So we have the software to be able to do that. And then Ansys has the software for simulation and analysis, which can be used in silicon design. It really can be used in all design. And right now, what we're facing as these complex chips are being built is it's really being able to bring those two design worlds together. So you want to know when you're building your digital chip, it's going to go into something, some kind of system. Maybe it's going to go into a data center. Maybe it's going to go into an EV. Maybe it's going to go into something in aerospace. You want to see how that chip is going to perform when it's in that full system. Or if you just stay in semiconductor, you want to see how that chip's going to perform when it's stacked with other chips. You know, things are moving to multi-die. So it's really bringing those two design environments together so that you can find issues earlier. When you find issues earlier, that means it's cheaper to solve, and then you actually can work on accelerated schedules.
Yeah, why is that more? I mean, it has always been true that chips get plugged into something. Why is this more necessary now? It's obviously probably always been an opportunity, but I think it's really different now.
It's really different now for two reasons. First of all, just the complexity of chips has grown so exponentially. We're talking chips with, hundreds of billions of transistors. So that's grown. The scale of that has driven basically disaggregation. So you can't actually build one piece of silicon. So you're building 3D. So kind of just all the complexity of chip design, and then the scale at which these systems are, and frankly, the barriers we're running into in systems. So you can think about automotive, like what barrier you're running into the system. Well, range is really important. And the more chips that you cram into an EV, the more power they take, and therefore you don't have the range. So some of these design requirements that are expected out of these new devices basically necessitate that you have to be designing them simultaneously and finding those issues ahead. And to your point, it always would have been great if we could have done that, but now it's really a necessity.
You guys had a partnership for a bunch of years before this, 3, if I recall correctly. What happened during that partnership to make this more obvious, outside of the fact that you guys, it's kind of like you were living together before you got married, which, isn't always the best idea. I don't know. But it was interesting.
We were partners since 2017. And really what started to happen in 2017 is Sassine Ghazi, who's our CEO, we had some multiphysics products. We were building them, but we weren't seeing success in the marketplace because Ansys is deemed the leader in the multiphysics products. And that's not something that, people take lightly because they want to make sure that the simulations that they do will actually be what manifests when they build a product. So the bar is really high. So that's why Sassine put the partnership together with Ansys. And so you can think about what we were doing with them is doing kind of, loosely coupled design capabilities. So you would be able to, more comprehensively understand what was going on with the design, but you still didn't have the insight early enough in the design. So you'd be able to figure out, oh, gee, these are the problems. Let's go back and fix the problems. But you wouldn't ahead of time see what the problems are. And then we also had joint go-to-market so that when we went to a customer, we could be essentially fully interlocked because, when you're working on complex designs, the customer really expects that to be really seamless. They don't want to have to go, try to sort out where the issue is. They want to have a comprehensive support to be able to make sure that they're getting their success and their outcome.
Yeah.
So I would say back to your dating analogy, which is interesting. We were able to, together go to the customer, together understand the customer pain point, but under the, joint relationship, we weren't able to ever really get to a fully integrated product. And that's really one of the things that we'll work on, immediately as we move forward, start to integrate things together so that we'll have new product offerings so that customers have that more fused sort of capability.
Does that mean because the partnership was going on for so long, that there was kind of less overlap, less competing product?
Absolutely. And our businesses are very complementary. As you know, we're the leader in digital design. Ansys is the leader in simulation analysis. They're very complementary portfolios. We did have a few areas of overlap. Those are the areas that we'll be divesting. But in general, we're largely complementary. And because we work so closely together, our engineers know each other really well, which is, builds a strong foundation as they come together under, kind of one roof to be able to build products together.
So let's talk a little bit about the process here, because so much has happened over the course of time from when the deal was announced. Well, not least of which you mentioned Sassine. Sassine had just come into the company as the CEO. He'd been at the company for forever, but new leadership and in the CEO job, and this giant acquisition, and then kind of a long period of time that coincided with a change in the administration, a different kind of focus on semiconductors' importance for national security, changing ideas about that. Of course, the rate of change of those things is unprecedented even now. Talk to me about how this went on and what the kind of key moments were in closing this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we knew at the start, we had expected that the deal would close in first half of 25. We're a little bit off that, just, a few days off that.
Days.
But we knew that since we're global companies, we would need to go through a robust regulatory process really in major jurisdictions. And obviously each one of them has a different process, quite a bit of rigor in those processes. So that part we knew. And then we knew that, obviously there was an election coming up. The part that we didn't know that maybe to your point was unknowable was then some of the geopolitical tension that would, come into the mix during this time frame. And I guess the thing that really stood out for us in this process was, first of all, the endorsement from customers and support from customers to be able to have these two design environments come together, because this isn't a future problem. We're not worried about something that will happen, in the future. This is a problem customers are having today, and they're very much looking for a solution for it. And then also really the essentialness of what we do as a company, because that having those capabilities is really what fuels innovation of companies, which is really becoming sort of a national interest, a source of national interest really in almost every geography. And so I would say as we went through the process, there was big milestones. We were getting approval through the various jurisdictions. We always knew that, part of the process is you need approval in one jurisdiction that helps inform the next jurisdiction. So there is a bit of a rolling process that we went through. The thing we hadn't anticipated was restrictions on our tools and technologies that would happen over the last several months. That was, new. That was unknowable, and obviously that caused, a bit of tension that had to be navigated through. But again, the underpinning of this was so fully supported and endorsed, and such strong customer engagement, which we felt really confident at the outset of this that would be the case. But what happened over time was just the reinforcement of that. So
yeah, that wasn't the commentary at the time. It's good to hear. What is that process? So take me to the weeds here. How do you go to your customer and say, hey, tell so and so you want to, what is the format of the presentation of that, and how does that actually happen?
Yeah, each jurisdiction is slightly different. There's a reach out process that each jurisdiction has to actually get that information, so that they, get, independent from us, they get that input from customers. And we had customers coming to us saying we really want this deal done, and so we said, here's where you should make sure that your voice is being heard, so that kind of feedback loop was there. But each jurisdiction has a very rigorous process to ensure that this is actually going to be good for customers, that this is actually going to be good for innovation. And so the process is, I think, honestly, to me, it obviously has to go through a rigorous process, but the fact that we were so successful going through this process really more demonstrates the support for this, not only from customers, but then also from the various countries.
Gratifying, I'm sure. I'm sure it was really interesting as well.
Oh, it's fascinating. I mean, on so many levels, it's fascinating because when this is the process that we did a lot of the diligence. You mentioned, the deal was announced in January of 2024. We, of course, were, over the course of the holidays working on this. And we knew the company so well, as we've talked about. So we understood the engineering team. We understood the sales and marketing team. In fact, our chief revenue officer, who's been here for 3 years, was the chief revenue officer at Ansys for the 5 years prior. So we knew the company so well, and we knew the industry and the customer so well. This is the part we knew the least, because we don't do this for the day job, right? This isn't our day job going through that. So we brought in all the consultants. As we mapped it out, we had, kind of a series of milestones and basically the different processes. And so we felt, that it was going to be difficult but doable. And it turned out that was right.
When you came out at the time and said it was 18 months, did you really think it was going to be 18 months? It's an extraordinarily long period of time in technology.
The roadmap kind of leads you there. I will be honest. I was hoping, because one of the things that we work on as a company and then we work on as an industry is how do we accelerate things. I was hoping that there was a process that could be faster than that. But, that is the way the processes across the globe are built. I think there's nothing about us particularly that elongated the process. It's the fact that we had to go through so many jurisdictions.
I presume the consultants are mostly lawyers. There's some bankers in there too as well.
We had a lot of consultants through the process. I think the thing that's really helpful about them is they can help lay the process out, but you really need to own the engagement, because this is super important to us when we're talking to these regulators. They want to talk to the people inside the company, because it's really something where we're the ones that they're making sure that they've had the conversations with. So I think Sassine, he's been back and forth to China at least 8 times this year. So he'll welcome having a little bit of probably not free time, because that's not the way he does things. He's a person with great energy, driving our company forward, but just put that time back more on the company.
I'm trying to see the glee in the CFO's face, because you must be glad to not be writing all those checks in the next quarter to all those lawyers and consultants and lobbyists.
And what I'm really glad about is because the curtains have come down. As you know, in the regulatory process, everything has to be in the clean room, so we cannot share data. But what I'm so excited about, Corey, is first of all, getting through the process, to your point, but also just being able to have the teams have the primary data to be able to work with each other, because we're hitting the ground running already. So as you think about things, the one good thing about a long regulatory process, we had a lot of time to plan. But now we're, okay, let's go execute those plans and let's go implement those plans. And we're doing that across the company.
Well, I want to talk about that. I shouldn't leave out this sort of what seemed to me the biggest change was when just a few weeks before the deal finally closed, there was a lifting of restrictions on the ability to sell into China, which clearly had a huge effect on closing this deal.
Absolutely. So I think the BIS restrictions that were put on, they were put on actually the day after our earnings call. So we did earnings call on May 28th, and we got a letter on May 29th. That was a bit of, I would call it a headwind, because that created
Nicely put.
uncertainty.
I'm hoping you had more colorful language in private.
Yeah, yes, that was a bit. It was a surprise because the way it was done was different from how it's been done before. In the past, it would be a technology that was restricted or a customer that was restricted. So yeah, that was quite disruptive, and that created sort of a series of what you will sort of trying to understand, seeking to understand, trying to understand how this affects the customers. Because again, we're customer centric. So, step number 1, 2, and 3 is how does this impact the customers, and, what is the right way for us to move forward? But then obviously it was a disruption in the conversation as we were moving through the regulatory process. And so I would say having that situation resolved and clarified was an important element.
Well, it also, it sits on top of this philosophical discussion that is ongoing and has sometimes nothing to do with technology, but it was how do you engage with your potential enemies or not, and where do you put up walls, and where do you want to be engaged together, work together, negotiate and discuss and share information so that we have a global community. And it's a challenging conversation, right? It came up with Iran, and when it came to a war recently, and it's kind of the same discussion. How much do you want to engage? How much do you want to put up walls?
Yeah, and I think for us, we're not a political specialist. That's not really our expertise. Our specialty is in driving innovation to allow customers to build new innovative products. And in terms of the, kind of as we bring these two design worlds together, as we've talked about, like that innovation is so essential to continued innovation inside a country, inside a company. And I think that was the thing that really everybody agreed on. How critical that was. And so we can't really be the people, although I think Sasim might have mentioned he, through the process, became a bit of a political ambassador just by the nature of, kind of the environment that we were in. But really our day job is building innovation, and we want to be able to offer that to our customers globally.
So to that, when do we expect to see the first set of integrated capabilities into next year?
That's a great question. So our design cycle is about 9 months. So we expect our first integrated solution in 9 months, so about March next year.
And do you think that we start to see financial results from that into next year already, or is that kind of a long-term process?
It's a long-term process. What we've talked about is having $400 million in revenue synergies run rate by year 4. So what we're doing is we're going to build out a roadmap. The first products that we're building out are the ones that, we're basically the top priorities to get together. And then we've got a series of items that will come back behind that. But it'll be a build over time. And as you know, we're a software business, so you have to kind of build that up over time.
What does that mean for gross margins? What does it mean for operating margins? I don't really care about specific numbers, but I just kind of wonder the direction of things.
I was going to say our long-term commits are that we will have industry-leading double-digit revenue growth. We'll have margins in the mid-40s. So that's where we're driving the company. And we'll
obviously operating margins in mid-40s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. What a great business. Software.
It's a great business. And I think the fact that, the person we're selling to inside the company for our products, that person has the most mission critical job in the company, because we're selling to the engineers. We're selling to the people that develop the products that fuel a company. So our ability to, continue to have that person and therefore that company be successful is really what fuels our business growth.
I would imagine you've also, because you've had so much time, no one's certainly not surprised by it, but there's probably been a lot of ideation about what could happen as these companies come together.
Yeah, what's been interesting is, customers continue to give feedback on what would be important for them and what's a priority for them, and we can plan for things. We just couldn't execute anything. So we've got tremendous feedback from customers, and now it's just how do we drive that into a roadmap with a consistent execution over time. But literally almost every customer has gotten feedback and given us input on what they would like to see. Now, of course, everybody doesn't align on all their priorities, so that's the work that we have to do on prioritizing things. But yeah, there's no shortage of input. One thing that's really emerged since, Corey, since we started this, is really the rise of physical AI. And that's become an area that people are really interested in because recall just, in January of 2024, we weren't really talking about that, but a lot of discussions around this idea of building a digital twin. That's something that we hadn't put into, we put it into sort of, that's a future thing, but it's really coming into focus now as people are really talking a lot more about physical AI. How would you get to a digital twin so you can test things in a safe environment before you put it out into, the real world? And so that's, a new opportunity. Again, that wasn't even one opportunity
Right.
that was even in our thoughts in January of 2024.
Well, and what fun for your customers and for you guys to have people starting conversations with, wouldn't it be cool if? And I would imagine that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the pace at which this industry is moving is really, I think, something that we've not seen before. And the dissatisfaction with how long it takes to design things is, never been higher. And so that's a great environment. That's a great setup for us.
Great stuff. Shelagh Glaser, the Chief Financial Officer from Synopsis. Thank you very much.
Great to see you, Corey. Thank you.
All right, and coming up next, The Bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot about this big deal. And now The Bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot about that giant Synopsis deal with Ansys. And that number is 549, because it took 549 days from the announcement of this deal until it actually closed with the approval, finally, of the last approval of Chinese authorities. Let this deal go through. We'll see what it means over the long term for the new, bigger Synopsis. All right, thanks for checking out the drill down. I'm Corey Johnson.